Here, in the Kairouané Province of southeastern Guinea, a super iron ore mine that has been dormant for nearly a century is being awakened. Its reserves reach an astonishing 3 billion tons. Before long, the first shipments of ore from this site will be loaded onto vessels bound for Chinese ports. For China, this marks another major milestone in its decades-long effort to break the global monopoly on iron ore pricing. In today's video, we'll explain just how important this super mine is to China and why China has spent decades trying to reshape the way iron ore prices are set. If you like our video content, please click to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can receive all our latest video content. Now, let's get into today's topic. Before we dive into the main topic, let's take a look at an important event that happened last month. In October of this year, Beijing announced the suspension of all US dollar-denominated iron ore transactions with BHP. From now on, all future purchases must be settled in Chinese yuan. Why did China suddenly make such a demand of Australia? The core reason lies in this. Although China is the world's largest buyer of iron ore, it has never had a real say in how iron ore prices are determined. As far as I know, China imports over 1 billion tons of iron ore each year, more than 70% of the world's total imports. More than half of that supply comes from Australia. And among all Australian suppliers, BHP has long been one of China's most important partners. According to public data, BHP exported around 30 billion US dollars worth of iron ore to China in 2024. Logically speaking, as Australia's largest customer, China should have some influence over pricing. But in reality, that's far from the case. Over the past decade, Australia's iron ore exports have operated under a system entirely designed and dominated by itself, centered on three core mechanisms: US dollar pricing, the Platts Index for price benchmarks, and offshore spot trading. From price setting to settlement, virtually everything has been controlled by Australia. Meanwhile, China has had no say in determining prices and has been forced to pay in US dollars. The irony is that the average mining cost per ton of ore is just over $20, while the selling price has often soared above $100 per ton. As the cost of importing iron ore climbed, profit margins for Chinese steel mills dropped sharply, in some cases to less than 1% for the entire year. By August 2025, China decided to challenge this long-standing imbalance. A new round of long-term agreement negotiations began between a major Chinese mineral resources group and the Australian mining giant BHP. The key focus this time was whether China could reduce its dependence on the Platts Index and eliminate the use of the US dollar for iron ore settlements. From what I know, during this round of talks, Beijing demanded that iron ore be settled in Chinese yuan and sought to lock the spot price at $80 per ton. BHP, on the other hand, insisted on sticking with US dollar payments and aimed to raise prices by 15% in the 2025 fiscal year, up to $109.50 per ton. The two sides were more than $30 apart in their bottom line positions. After multiple rounds of negotiations ended in stalemate, China issued a notice at the end of September to all major steel mills and iron ore traders nationwide. From that point onward, no BHP iron ore priced in US dollars could be purchased. This applied to new contracts, shipments already in transit, and even vessels about to dock. If the transactions weren't settled in yuan, the cargoes could not be received. It's worth noting that, at that time, 12 BHP vessels were already en route to Chinese ports, each carrying between 100,000 and 200,000 tons of ore, together worth several hundred million US dollars. When they arrived, they were forced to anchor offshore, unable to unload their cargo. But just a week later, BHP finally agreed to settle 30% of its iron ore sales to China in yuan and to price them accordingly. In truth, they didn't have much of a choice. If China were to completely halt its purchases, BHP would face at least $30 billion in direct annual losses. Even worse, the the impact would ripple far beyond the company itself. Western Australia, which accounts for about 80% of the country's iron ore exports, derives nearly 40% of its state revenue from iron ore related taxes. If the export chain were cut off, the state's budget deficit was projected to swell to $16.4 billion. Of course, the reason China was able to take such a decisive step at this critical moment is likely tied to the fact that it has officially begun developing a super iron ore mine with reserves of 3 billion tons. So, what exactly is happening here? In the Kairouané Province of southeastern Guinea lies a mining area known as Simandou, believed to be one of the world's largest untapped iron ore deposits. As early as the 1990s, mining giant Rio Tinto sent exploration teams to Guinea to conduct detailed geological surveys of the Simandou region. They confirmed that the area contained exceptionally rich, high-grade iron ore reserves. By the end of the 20th century, geological experts had largely confirmed that the proven reserves in Simandou amounted to at least 3 billion tons, with ore quality far above the global average. From then on, Simandou gradually became one of the most coveted strategic resources in the global iron ore market. However, because of its remote location and Guinea's long history of political instability, military coups, and corruption scandals, the Simandou project remained largely theoretical, existing only as paper value. For years, the site was controlled by Rio Tinto, but despite several changes in the company's executive leadership, no substantial investment or development ever took place. In 2007, BHP made a proposal to acquire Rio Tinto in its entirety, offering around $147 billion, which included Rio Tinto's Simandou assets. However, Rio Tinto rejected the offer, arguing that it undervalued the company. The merger collapsed, and soon after, Guinea entered another period of political upheaval. In 2008, then-President Lansana Conté, seeking to accelerate resource development, decided to reduce Rio Tinto's control over the Simandou project. He transferred the mining rights for 2 of the deposits to BSGR, a company owned by Israeli diamond tycoon Benny Steinmetz, in hopes of bringing in new capital and partners. But after Conté's death, the subsequent change in government triggered disputes over ownership of the mining rights. Not long after, BSGR sold its 51% stake in the Simandou project to Brazilian mining giant Vale for about $2.5 billion. Then, in 2014, the Guinean government ruled that BSGR had obtained its mining rights through bribery and corruption and revoked its joint venture license with Vale for the northern section of Simandou. As we can see, over the past decade, despite many global mining giants showing interest in investing, no substantial development ever truly began at Simandou. That changed in late 2019 when a new investment consortium, jointly formed by Chinese and Singaporean enterprises, secured the mining rights for Blocks 1 and 2 of the northern section of Simandou with a total investment commitment of $14 billion. But the real challenge of Guinea's Simandou iron ore project has never been how to mine the ore, it's how to transport it out of the country efficiently. Before the winning consortium Simandou, WCS, secured the development rights, Guinea's railway infrastructure was extremely limited. One of its main railways, built during the French colonial era in the early 1900s, stretched 662 kilometers but had long fallen into disrepair. By 2000, the Guinean government decided to dismantle the railway entirely, selling off the tracks, sleepers, and even bridge materials as scrap. As a result, the project partners had to start from scratch, building a completely new railway that would run across the country for about 650 kilometers, from the Simandou mine all the way to the Port of Monaco. They also had to construct a brand new deep-water export port. According to available information, this part of the investment is expected to exceed $20 billion, jointly funded and shared by WCS and Rio Tinto. As of now, the infrastructure construction related to the Simandou project has been largely completed, and most of the major obstacles to progress have been cleared. In October of this year, The project's first heavy-haul iron ore train departed from the mine's loading terminal, traveling along the newly built Trans-Guinea Railway toward the Morabea port, marking the railway's entry into practical operation. Moreover, the first batch of iron ore is scheduled to be shipped this month, with about 200,000 tons expected to be loaded on a large bulk carriers bound for Chinese ports before the end of the year. Next, the mine's on-site infrastructure will move into its final stage of completion, while port construction continues. With supporting facilities steadily improving, production capacity is expected to ramp up over the next 30 months, eventually reaching an annual output of around 60 million tons. Although the project's investors have not yet released an official production target, many industry analysts predict that Simandou's annual output could eventually account for about 5% of the world's total iron ore production. Some major mining companies even forecast that as Simandou and other new sources of supply come online, global iron ore prices could drop to around $85 per ton within the next 3 years. Even under the most optimistic scenarios, prices are unlikely to remain above $100 per ton. As prices gradually decline, China, the world's largest iron ore importer, will begin to shift its role in global trade from being a price taker to becoming a true price maker. Of course, the Guinean government is equally delighted. Although large-scale iron ore mining may drive down global prices, the government still places great hope and importance on this massive national project. According to forecasts by the International Monetary Fund, the Simandou mine could boost Guinea's GDP by at least 1/4 over the next decade. To better manage and plan for this incoming wave of mining revenue, the Guinean government has even hired the Rothschild Group to oversee investment and financial management related to the iron ore sector. Their goal is for Simandou's iron ore to become, much like oil in the Middle East, a key resource driving the nation's long-term prosperity, while also avoiding the so-called resource curse. Within the broader project, Chinese companies have introduced advanced mining technologies and have also committed to building steel plants locally in Guinea, helping the country move toward industrialization and economic diversification. According to the current plan, Simandou is expected to reach full production by 2028. By then, each heavy-haul train will be able to transport up to 8,000 tons of iron ore in a single trip, delivering it continuously to the port. From there, loading onto ships will take just 48 hours, and under this efficient system, nearly one fully loaded vessel carrying Guinean iron ore will set sail every single day. To not miss out on our future projects and news updates, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We will continue to provide you with more exciting and interesting content.